Today I'm joined by Cindy Payne, a licensed therapist, trauma specialist, certified yoga teacher, and host of the Reclaiming Me podcast. Cindy specializes in helping high achieving men and women break free from perfectionism, people pleasing, and survival driven patterns that often sit beneath stress, anxiety, and burnout. Having experienced many of these struggles herself, Cindy now helps people create greater self trust, emotional resilience, and a deeper sense of well-being through trauma-informed therapy and nervous system regulation. I'm really looking forward to exploring topics such as survival mode, perfectionism, people-pleasing, nervous system safety, and what it really takes to create lasting change in our lives. Cindy, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, no, my pleasure indeed. So I just want to kind of kick off by getting into a bit about you. Can you tell us a little bit about your own journey and what led you to specialize in what I've just said, trauma, perfectionism, and people pleasing? Can you just give us a little bit of
Sure.
insight in your background and what got you into all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my path into this work wasn't purely academic, it was really personal first. I spent a lot of years just being the person who held everything together for everyone else. And I later on would come to learn that this stemmed from early childhood trauma for me. So, watching my family of origin just kind of live in chaos. We have a history of mental illness and substance misuse. And there's just a lot of things that felt really out of control for me. And so I didn't have language for it at the time, but I was operating from survival mode, I think, long before I ever sat in a graduate school classroom. It wasn't until I started doing my own healing work and later training clinically that I really began to understand what I'd actually been living, which was complex trauma and the perfectionism and people pleasing that grow up around it as forms of protection. And so for me, specializing in this isn't, I don't view it as like a professional choice that I made from a distance. Rather, it was the work that I had to do on myself first. And now I get to walk alongside other people doing the same thing. So it's pretty cool.
Wow, I can really, really resonate with what you've said there in terms of, people pleasing. I'm getting better, but I'm a bit
Yeah.
like what you've described.
Recovering.
What you've just described, I was the biggest people pleaser known to me, especially when I was got into work because um when my sister kind of moved out when I was say how old would I have been? About 15, 16, she moved out and
Hmm.
I was sat with my mum and dad at the dinner table and I hear my mum and dad talk about
Yeah.
work all the time. And I
Mm.
think that kind of started me off on the people pleasing venture. But when I got into work, that's exactly what
Yeah.
I was. I was people pleasing. And I thought if I just did this, my boss would be happy. And if I did that,
Yep.
I'd be happy. And this person would like me. And it gets exhausting after a bit. It works for a certain amount of
Yes.
time, but it's just not sustainable.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think that that kind of runs along like the developmental like trajectory, right? Like we start to develop more of a sense of self and then we start to reflect at different points in our life and we just can't hold what we used to be able to hold anymore. I think as you get older, you don't have the capacity anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you for that start. That's a wonderful start to the episode. I
Yeah.
was reading your website earlier, as I said to you off recording and listen to your podcast, etc. But
Yeah.
this particular one sticks out to me. You write openly about looking successful on the outside whilst
Mm.
feeling exhausted on the inside. How did that experience shape the way you work to for what you do today? So with your clients and family life,
Yeah.
anything personal?
Oh, good question. This gap between the outside and the inside is exactly what I built my practice around. And for years, I could check every box. I could look put together. I was the reliable one. I was the one that was like carrying, like three toddlers essentially. And they're like, how are you doing it? And still feel like I was running on fumes underneath it all. And what I've learned over the years, both personally and clinically, is that success to me built on top of a dysregulated nervous system is not sustainable. And it's just well managed exhaustion is really what it is. And that experience is why I don't just work with symptoms on the surface anymore. I want to know what's actually happening underneath someone's competence because that to me is where the real work lives.
Well-managed
Yeah.
exhaustion. Now that's a term to just
Yeah.
and because I
Yep.
imagine there's a lot of people that have come to you and people who listen to my podcasts who are exactly that. They're managing
Yeah.
exhaustion really well, but underneath it all, they're really screaming for help. And I like what you
Yes.
said there about, getting to the bottom of it because people are much more than how they feel, how
Mm,
their stress levels. And
mhm.
I really like that. That's why I do what I do as well because why it's called Wave Work Stress Goodbye. Because I like to and getting people like you on here because I like people to really realize that no matter how difficult it is in the outside world and whatever they're
Yeah.
feeling, like you say, free toddlers. I'd be, I've got two kids myself. I can kind of relate to that. It's
Yeah.
it's it is exhausting and it gets on us, but we are so much more than stress and anxiety.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And we can't really get to the core of it until the symptoms really kind of start getting to the point where it's not acute anymore, right? Like I can't just keep like nursing the wound and then just moving on. It's going to keep coming back and it's going to keep coming back tenfold. Yeah.
So when you say nursing the wound to in terms of talking to a client, how do you go about it if the person you're speaking with just quite isn't getting what you're saying? Do you have an empathetic approach to it? Do you get
Yeah.
methods? Do you try and put yourself in the other person's shoes? What do you do to help people see that they're not what I've described? They're not their stress and
Yeah.
anxiety.
Sure, sure. So I think that this is a real delicate entryway point. At least for me, it was, right? So like I was really good at like sussing out therapists that would ask me questions that felt kind of loaded without doing the work to build like the trust and the safety first. We high achievers and recovering perfectionists, like we're really good at outrunning our own nervous systems, right? And this achievement becomes this coping strategy. So, like, if I perform well enough, then I'll finally feel safe and worthy enough. And the finish line keeps moving, right? So, when someone is coming at me with an approach and hasn't really built the relationship piece with me first and earned the trust, I'm going to kind of call BS on it like pretty quickly, and I'm not invested in it as readily as I would if you had taken the time to just really understand my story, right? Because this is about a body and a nervous system that learned early on that being impressive and useful and in control was like the safest way to exist. And so you can hit every external marker with me and feel but I'm still feeling like I'm one step behind this like invisible threat. And so I guess to answer your question, it would be safety and trust building in those early stages of therapy with clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that sounds really good. From what you said there, you've took me right back to me personally because I don't think I've told you this yet on email or off camera, but I was a project manager for
Mm,
7
yeah.
years, and I was really stressed, and I did,
Yeah.
and I binned it off because it was so stressful about 2 years ago before I started doing this kind of work, and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
even though I've been away from it for 2 years, I like you say it comes through the body. You just said that in your
Yes.
explanations. Now and again, like when I'm just washing the pots or something like that, I feel the trauma of it coming through my body as if it's still happening
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
because like you say, from a young age, we hook on to the way things feel, not just mentally, but in the body as well. And because it felt so
Yes.
heavy for me, I guess it's taken
Yeah.
me a long time to kind of get over. But at the same time, when I think about it, it comes right through
Mm-hmm.
through the body as well. But thankfully, doing the work what I do, I recognize it for what it is. I know that's not really me. It's just a temporary experience that's flowing through me, but like my body's telling me it's happening, but not really
Yes.
happening at the same time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know, when we kind of developed back in the olden times because a bear might chase us, it's that kind of thing.
Yes.
The threat of it, but there's no real threat there going on anymore. I've not been there for 2 years, and even though I
Yeah.
feel it in my heart pounding and my sweaty palms,
Mm-hmm.
nothing's really going on. And as simple as that sounds, that's very difficult to get across to a client, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yes, and I think the biggest piece of this work, first and foremost, is if we can help clients understand that trauma in the body. And I will say I'll call it trauma because we do experience trauma in the workplace. It might not be the big capital T traumas that we witness on television or social media, but these are little T traumas, like not being heard, not being seen, the threat of job loss. I've got to overperform now in all these areas. And over time, if we're not processing any of that in our body holds on to it as if it's happening in real time. So when clients come to me and say, I had this really outsized reaction and I was just washing the dishes, I'm going to be there to gently remind you that, like, yeah, trauma doesn't have a timestamp. So it can't distinguish the difference between right now and maybe something that
Yes,
happened when you were single digit in age. And I know
absolutely.
that is so hard to conceptualize in our brains because we want to make sense of it so badly, but our body doesn't work that way.
But you can imagine someone who doesn't understand that, can't you? About washing the dishes and
Yeah.
saying, not saying, I won't use me as an example this time, but say someone
Hmm.
else left a job after 2 years and they were so anxious
Yeah.
and stress ridden by it. If they
Hmm.
don't understand what we just said and they're feeling the trauma,
Yeah.
but they probably think something's wrong with them.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with
Yes.
them.
And some of your questions, when I was looking over before we got on here, you were asking about, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead or jumping around or getting you off track, but you were talking about like survival mode. And like, I don't know if a lot of us really understand how much we are in survival mode sometimes in our everyday working life because it rarely looks dramatic. It looks more like over preparing for a meeting that didn't need it, or saying yes before you've even checked in with yourself about whether you have the capacity, or maybe feeling a flash of dread when you get that email notification, staying two steps ahead of
Oh, I'm
everyone.
sure we
So
can all relate.
nothing
I'm
can,
sure we can all relate to that one.
oh
The
gosh,
email coming in.
the dread and the dread. So it's the inability to rest, even when there's nothing urgent happening, because your body doesn't actually believe that it's safe to stop. So
Travel.
survival,
Travel
yeah.
travel was my survival mode when I was a project manager. When I knew I was going on
Oh,
a, I used to go
yeah.
to Ireland a lot for work,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
even though it was only a short flight, because I'm obviously England based, the
Yeah.
anxiety of thinking of the travel, the meeting used to come right through me. And the irony was, like you
Yes.
say, sometimes the meeting would be cancelled anyway, so I
Yeah.
didn't wouldn't go anyway, or um, it would be in about 2 3 weeks, and there'd be no need to be thinking about it a bit all the time. But yeah, I was. So
Yeah.
that was me
Yes.
in survival mode there, overthinking about something that didn't really need to be overthought by that. It's like a car engine that's been revved too much. It's constantly revving, the
Hmm.
needles going up all the time, and that's what my brain was doing. And no wonder I was so burnt out because I was just
Yeah,
unnecessarily doing
totally.
things to myself which didn't need to be done.
And here's the thing that I want to add to that. I'm so glad that you used the car wash, or the analogy of
Cars
the
are a great
car.
metaphor for stuff like this.
Right. Yeah. We can talk cars for sure. But it's like knowing that you have something under the engine that isn't working properly, but because of the pressure that we have in corporate settings often and how it gets rewarded to work harder and get these accolades and get ahead, it's like we know that the engine light's coming on, but we're taking it through the car wash and expecting it to fix the engine. And it's like, no, you just now cleaned the car, but it's still broken. It looks real good.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. You've just polished it, can't polish the problem
Yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. But we never really looked under the hood. So there's a problem. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is Wave Work Stress Goodbye. So many of the listeners to my podcast are working professionals, so managing
Hmm.
directors, CEOs, team leaders,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. So these are high achieving people. Like you've said, I think you mentioned either on the recording or off the recording about high achievers. So why do high
Yeah.
achievers find themselves struggling with stress and burnout despite looking successful on the outside? And I guess that was me when I was a
Mm.
project manager. Had it all. I had the salary. I had the job on paper. Like I said, I was traveling.
Yeah.
I had my own phone, my own company credit card.
Hmm.
I had it all. Yet I'm more happy now, 2 years out of it, than I was then. So what's
Yeah.
going on there in your point of view for people like me and people similar to that description?
Yeah. I think the thing that I have come to learn about high achievers as being one myself as well is that, and it's taken a lot of help of other, people who've earned the right in my life to point this out to me, that high achievers were really incredibly good at outrunning our nervous systems because achievement becomes a coping strategy in of itself. So if I perform well enough, I'll finally feel safe. I'll finally feel worthy. I'll finally feel enough. The problem is that, to me anyway, is that the finish line keeps moving because the exhaustion was never really about the workload. It's more about a body and a nervous system that learned early on that being impressive and useful and in control is the safest way to exist. And you can hit every external marker of success and still feel like you are one step behind in this invisible threat because the threat isn't external anymore. Now the threat's internal. And so I think that's the best way I know to describe the struggle with this thing that we're doing, and we're kind of aware we're doing it, but we can't seem to quit it, I guess, because it's protection.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we do what works.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's like the phone thing we were talking about, isn't it, as well? Because it's the smartphones. Like
Yes.
you just said, the when you're on these things, just to use the phone as a metaphor, I
Yeah.
often find that I'm on it and I know it's not good for me, and yet I'm
Yeah.
still doing it. And I guess that's the kind of thing you want, the
Yes.
similar thing, because it's like stress isn't good for us, and we know we're
Mm-hmm.
kind of aware of it. No, it's not good for us, but we can't stop going down that rabbit hole like I was when I was
Yeah.
a project manager. And
Yes.
I love what you're going fast, rewinding back to when you start answering this question. I love what you said
Mm-hmm.
about the burnout was never about the workload. I think that's what you said, or similar
Mm-hmm.
to what you've said, and
Mm-hmm.
that's so true with people. That's why I do this, because I try and get the point across to people that the outside world is not dictating people's experience in here. It seems like it.
Right. It's very tricky and it's very sneaky the way that it creeps up.
Yes.
Right. Because I think as a woman too, I mean, that's a whole separate podcast episode, but like we are, what I like to say, like we are raised and praised to be compliant, to be hardworking, to be good girls, to don't push back and ask questions, like just get the job done and do it exceptionally. Yeah.
And I
That's
think
how I was raised anyway.
you mentioned women as well. 85% of my listeners are female,
Oh,
and
wow. Yeah.
I think like you say, for women, not like you say, the pressure for a woman to kind of impress
Hmm.
and do this and do that, that's become more and more in this century. This has become more intensified than it was, say,
Yeah.
30, 40, 50 years ago.
Yes.
With like 30, 40, 50 years ago, I don't know about America, but in England certainly, you just have the
Hmm.
one parent go to work, and it mainly be the male. Now
Yeah.
times have
Yeah.
changed. Both parents are expected to go to work full time, and that's a lot of pressure for both men and there's particularly women, especially when there's, as you like you say, three toddlers to raise as well at the same time. It's not
Yes.
easy.
Yes. And it's kind of like I can't I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. If I go to work, then I'm a bad mom and I'm not fulfilling. I should have been at home and like spent a little bit more time. But if I stay home, then I'm also not winning. I'm also not getting ahead. I'm also not fulfilling this role. So it's like it's impossible. It becomes this impossible thing to win to get right.
Because this is something my wife struggles with at the minute. She's obviously a mom
Sure.
of two girls, and I work full time, and she works part time at the a UK supermarket chain called Sainsbury's. Probably never heard of it in
Hmm.
America, but it's very, very
Yeah.
famous supermarket chain over here. And she can't. I have this conversation for quite a lot. She kind of puts herself down because she's
Mm.
a full-time mom and only does 2 days a week at Sainsbury's. And I'm thinking, Charlotte, you got to cut yourself some slack. You do the most important
Yes.
job that any woman can
Yes.
do, which is raising kids. And the fact you're doing additional work, if it's 2 days a week or 1 day a week, is a massive
Yes.
bonus. And I imagine there's a lot of listeners who are probably on maybe maternity leave at the minute, or do that kind of thing as well, just to kind of bring a little bit of money and that think less of themselves because they don't do
Yeah.
full-time work. And it's crazy, crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. We just always keep moving the standard. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you talk about people operating from survival mode. and you might have touched
Yes.
on this already, but it was one of my questions, so I will ask it just in case we missed something a bit deeper about it. What does survival mode look like in everyday working life? And that's so you might have covered it, but there might be something we've missed. So, is there anything else you could
Yeah.
layer on
You know,
that?
I I think that's why this is so tricky for me anyway with survival mode at work is because, again, oftentimes when we think survival mode, we're thinking about like just gritting teeth and keeping your head down and just like suffering. And it's just so obvious to everybody around you that you are in anguish. And in the workplace, because a lot of times we're not really conditioned to show any of that vulnerability, it does go unnoticed, I think, oftentimes. It's not this dramatic thing. So it's not I think I was giving examples of like over preparing and like signing up for all the roles and like people aren't seeing and they're not experiencing the dread that we might be experiencing on the inside because there's no urgency until we just kind of crack one day and we can't shoulder it all anymore, and that's why I think burnout is so misunderstood. There's still a lot of information that we're learning about it, but also for corporations and workplaces to be set up to support us if not just when we're struggling, but like all along the way, the awareness, the conversations. Are we talking about this in the workplace even? Is that even a conversation that we feel comfortable having? Because most of us would say no.
I'm so glad you brought corporations into this because I think corporations do their best to support big, but I think because they lack understanding of what's really going on, which is why we're talking on this episode about it.
Yeah.
There's only so much they can do, and there's only so much free fruit in the office, and and
Yeah.
posters on mental. I don't know about America, but there's in the UK there's Mental Health Awareness Week, and I'll send emails, what posters up around the office, and that's all great. I'm not saying
Hmm.
that's a bad thing, but at the same time, they're missing the core root of the problem, which we're discussing
Yes.
on this podcast. And without that,
Yes.
they're missing the trick of how to support their workers in the workforce, and that's why I do these episodes because I'm trying to fill that gap. That's
Yeah.
being missed. I think
Hmm.
I, I know corporate America could be quite brutal as well, but in the
Yes.
UK, um, it's as if they've kind of we've ticked a box, we've put the posters up, now we move on. Like
Hmm.
we've done our bit, now it's up to you. It's kind of like I
Yep.
think you're kind of missing the point of support. That's how
Hmm.
I felt anyway when I was a project manager back in my old company. I really feel they
Totally.
missed a gap, and it's not just my old company. It's 99.9% of companies all around the world that are
Yes.
missing this point.
Absolutely. And I am so glad that you expanded on that because, I think for America, at least, we had a big, huge wake up call after COVID hit and everybody went remote. And then people were really struggling to get back in person because we had just all gone through this collective trauma and there wasn't a lot of language to help process it. And then how are we going to shift our values and how we show up for each other in these, more corporate type settings? And we just didn't have the preparation for it. And so people are coming back and they're still suffering and trying to process what just happened. And it's not that I agree with you. I think it's great that we are recognizing this and we're talking about it and we're hanging up the literature about it. But if it's just a week, then what does that communicate to us? How can we, or said a different way, how can we embed this into an ongoing conversation in the culture of our workplaces so that we feel seen? Because it would be lovely if I could just like say, okay, from this date to this date, I'm going to have my trauma reactions, right? And I'm not making light of it, but I'm just saying like that we just don't work that way. We're
No,
so much more complex.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, I think we might have touched on this on nervous system safety already, so I'll gloss over that. But why do some people feel like they've tried all the tricks of therapy, mindfulness, meditation, self-help, and
Mhm.
still don't feel fundamentally different? Like they feel like they've tried everything and then they still feel broken.
Yeah, it's so important. This is such an important question, and I'm kind of smiling because I actually just had lunch with a couple of other therapist friends, and we were talking about this very
Oh
thing,
wow,
of like,
quite a timely
yeah,
question then.
quite. It is a timely question because it's like, we all, I would agree, or I think we would all agree, we all sign up for therapy because we want change. We want things to be different in our lives. We want to alleviate the suffering and the pain that we're feeling. And I think, why do some people feel like they've tried and it's like nothing's fundamentally different? my response to that would be because a lot of that work happens at the level of thought, and the patterns we're talking about live below thought. The patterns that we're talking about live in the body and they live in the nervous system. And so you can journal, and I'm a huge fan of journaling. I'm a huge fan of reframe, and I'm a huge fan of meditation, but we can still flinch at conflict, and we can still overwork ourselves and still say yes when we mean no, because insight alone doesn't teach a nervous system that it's safe. That's usually the missing piece. It's not that the person did the work wrong. It's that the work didn't reach far down enough, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, absolutely. The reason I asked you that question, Cindy, is because that's on, I don't know if you listen to any of my solo episodes, but I talk
Yeah.
about, techniques like meditation. As much as they're great for one person, the next person it's not great for. So if
Yep.
it really was the answer to all our prayers in terms of, lack of work stress, everyone would be doing it. But
Yes.
what someone said a really great metaphor once, that he was on stage and said to the woman in the audience, "Would you take take my shoes?" And she's looking at him like that, going, "No, no, why would I wear your shoes for?" And then he got to the point of, "Well, because my shoes wouldn't fit you, but they fit me." And that's a
Yeah.
great way of describing, how methods are good for some people, but not good for
Hmm.
everybody. And that's what I try and
Yes.
portray, that, if we can get down to the root of, like you say, you hit the nail on the head with the word thought. That's excellent, because it is the thought that people bring to the table that's causing the suffering. And when people can understand that and, to see it for what it is, there's no need for the
Hmm.
meditation or the binge eating or the drug
Yeah.
taking, you know.
Yep.
It's something a lot deeper is going on. If people can just see through that, then life gets a lot easier. Like you say, it's a tricky one. Like you said like 10 minutes ago or so on this recording, it's a tricky one because all me and you can do, and for people, other therapists, is
Hmm.
say it in words.
Yes.
That's the only way you can describe it. And sometimes it can hit the nail on the head with people, and sometimes it can't.
Yeah. That no, you're exactly right. And I also practice a form of therapy called EMDR, so eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and that's specifically for trauma, but I think anyone could benefit from the resourcing that it provides, like learning to get in touch with your body. I mean, I say this all the time that, I can remember going to therapy many moons ago and having a therapist ask me, like, where do you feel that in your body? And I just remember looking at her and thinking, I don't. Like, I don't feel it in my body. I'm so neck up. I'm so cognitive. I can intellectualize my problem faster than you can, probably, but that's not alleviating the pain. So, yeah.
That brings me perfect onto my next question, actually, because my next question, which I think you've kind of said with that particular method, is
Yeah.
what are some practical ways someone can begin creating more internal safety for themselves? I think you've just said one, but is it
Yeah. That's one.
are there any others?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love this question because I think it gives something for everybody because, like you said, I might not be comfortable with EMDR as a modality, but I could try something different. And so a few places that I would point people to start is small, consistent nervous system check ins throughout the day. So I think we got to start there. Noticing what tension feels like. Where do you hold it in your body? Where do you notice yourself bracing or maybe even holding your breath before it builds into a full spiral? Slow, extended exhales, which is one of the fastest ways to physiologically signal safety to the body. Another big one, and I took this from Brene Brown's work, is naming what's happening internally, but here's the key: without judgment. Something like, part of me I'm noticing is on high alert right now, which creates a small amount of distance from the pattern. So you're not just feeling it and then reacting, you're feeling it and you're going, I'm noticing this. So like practicing tolerating small moments of stillness or rest without immediately trying to fill it with productivity, and noticing what comes up when you do, because none of these are going to be quick fixes, by the way. So sorry to, that's the bad news, right? These are reps, the same way that physical strength is built through repetition. So it's a felt sense of safety in the body. Yeah.
I love that answer. And you said the word notice and noticing a few
Noticing.
times, and that's the one that's stuck in my mind because if only we all just notice what was really going on, even if it's just a little
Mm,
bit, because I think
yeah.
that's the thing we do lack. We all lack, including me, despite me doing what I do, we all lack self-awareness. And
Hmm.
like I just said, if you even if you just notice a little bit, that could be the world of difference to getting over your pain. Like you say, it's not gonna be a quick thing, but
Yes.
if you notice a little bit, that's a much quicker path to getting over your pain than not realizing what's going on, not
Yeah.
noticing.
Absolutely. And one little thing I'll add, and again, this comes from Brene Brown's work, is she teaches people how to recognize shame in the body because shame has the same physical reaction as threat. So if I'm feeling in shame about something, for me, like my throat gets really tight, I get really hot, I get kind of this like weird wash over me, and my breath becomes really shallow. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if you would have asked me about that, I would have said, well, I'm having these thoughts. But I know that my body's having a physical reaction because it's bracing for danger and it's just trying to keep me safe. And so now if I'm in a shame storm, I now know to name it, and I know to set some parameters around myself. So like I don't respond. I try not to respond or text or talk until I'm through that moment and my prefrontal cortex is back online and I can think clearly. Because if not, I'll just become a keyboard warrior and I'll say things that I later regret. you know. So
I was going to ask you actually that just to add to that
yeah.
isn't it funny that you and me kind of know this stuff yet it's easy to forget. And
Hmm.
I think I heard that on your latest podcast episode this week about anger, about you were in a good frame of mind at one point, and it's just
Yeah.
easy to like I say noticing's massive, but it might take us a bit of time to get there, and it's amazing to it's amazing no matter how much knowledge we have about that we do forget because
Yes.
life's so seductive and the illusion's so compelling. So
Totally.
it's changing that fast that we just forget and forget.
Yes.
1 minute we can be this way, and next minute we can be that way, from positive to negative, and it's just so flash like a flash of lightning that we don't notice it moving.
Yeah. It is. We're such reactive beings, right? Because if you
Yeah,
think about how we were wired back in caveman days, it was literally to survive. That was it. That was our whole goal.
and that's it. We're cave people in a modern world, and we've like switched the
Yes,
phones again. We don't know how to deal with it.
that's right. That's right.
um, I think we talked about people pleasing already. That was the next question, so I got on to that. So,
Yeah.
um, for somebody who spent, I think you mentioned this at the start of the podcast actually. For somebody who spent years and years and years trying to people please and keep everyone happy,
Hmm.
what's the first step towards breaking that cycle? I've got a feeling you might have answered that question already, but I wanted to ask it again just in case you missed something with that.
Yeah. I don't think I did. I don't think I did
Oh,
answer
great!
that. I
That's a
think
relief. Not wasting your time.
no, this has been great. I think, for me, and I can speak to my own personal journey of trying to recover from this. I won't say stop it altogether because I do think a part of this is as a fawn response, which is another way that we're learning in the mental health field that we've learned to keep ourselves safe is to fawn, to have that kind of I'm doing this thing that gains compliance, but it also gains acceptance at the same time. And so when you're trying to uncover that and then recover from that, I think it's crucial to start smaller than you think. And the first step isn't this big dramatic boundary. It's the noticing again. So here we go
Yeah.
back to noticing. It's noticing the moment right before you say yes when you meant no. It's noticing the body sensations that show up when you're about to override your own need to accommodate somebody else. Awareness has to come before change because we cannot interrupt patterns that we can't feel happening in real time. So for me, it was a lot of like, people would make requests of me. And before I would even know it, I'm like, sure, yeah, I'm your girl, like whenever. And so with my own therapy, it was like, okay, Cindy, like what boundary do you want to practice setting around yourself before responding to anything, yes or no? And so getting in touch with what a full body yes felt like and what a full body no felt like. And if it's a full body no, I'm noticing resistance, I'm noticing constriction, and I'm noticing like a little flutter inside of me. That is everything trying to tell me, like, hey, pause. slow down, be with this. So I personally had to kind of instate this rule that before I responded to someone's request, I had to give myself an hour at least. And if I didn't, and if I was like, so like, oh, they're gonna be mad though if I don't say yes, I had to be like, let me get back to you. That sounds great. Thank you for thinking of me. I need to think on some things and just take a peek, and I'll let you know for sure. And sometimes that was yes, and sometimes it was no. So yeah, that's kind of where I'd start.
I
Very
love,
small.
I like when you said about looking for the smallest step, because I think we're quite, as people, we like you say, we're capable of living in a modern world. We've become quite impatient as people, I think. So when we're
Yeah.
wanting something to be better or fixed quickly,
Yes.
like you say, we kind of want it overnight or or instant. And sometimes because of the way the body and mind has got, it's not easy to get to that point so quickly. But like you say, just the smallest step of recognizing can get us
Hmm.
a long way, like we said about the noticing thinking. And isn't it really funny how we see these things as bad things? So, the body getting sweaty palms and the body
Hmm.
shaking and
Hmm.
the thoughts, like you say, that's a signal, I think,
Yes.
to come back to the real us. It's
Yeah.
like, when my car on the drive outside, when you reverse it out, it's got
Hmm.
sensors, and you might have as well when you get close to something, it beeps and warns you, and the camera will say, "Oh yeah,
Yes.
I'm good." That's a great cars again. I said cars are good
I was gonna say,
metaphors
Luke,
for this.
cars again.
It's a signal to say danger. To say danger's coming. You need to kind of come back to, you know, change something or come back to the present and where you are. And that's the same as for us as people. We need to come back to the real us rather than the danger we're feeling is a bad thing. It's a signal that we've gone off track, basically.
Yes. And I just had a funny little connection when you said something about the signal, the backup signal. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder if like a lot of us 80s and 90s kids like struggle even more with this because we grew up without the sensors and the backup cameras. So we just would bang into things, right? That's
Yeah,
how we
yeah.
learned.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the, I still, yeah, I'm a little bit younger than you, but I grew up in the year where you just got thrown in the back of the car. There were no booster seats for children, anything like that.
Right.
You literally just got thrown in the back and got on with it. I remember a friend, I was about 13, and it was his birthday, and we went bowling or something like that. And I think
Uh-huh.
there was his dad and his mum sat in the front, and there was four of us, and the dad made my friend the best man at my wedding actually
Uh-huh.
get in the boo. This was like in the early 2000s, like you say, no, that you won't get away with that today.
That's amazing. We were quite feral. I mean, really, like we had to learn the rough and tumble way. We didn't have the fancy sensors, and so maybe that's why it's taken us a little bit longer to learn some of these lessons.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's so
Like
funny.
you say, kids have no idea these days.
No clue. No clue.
um, so one thing I explore on the podcast I mentioned before is how two people can experience one thing. So you've got two colleagues in the workplace. One
Yeah.
and they've got the same workload. One person's experiencing really stressful and really sick of it. The other person's like, taking it in the stride, no sweat.
Hmm.
What's going on there? How can two people see the same thing totally different? And I'm interested to get your perspective on that as a licensed therapist, actually.
Yeah. Oh, I love this question. I think any kind of workplace where you're like looking at someone else who's like seemingly holding it all together and they're not struggling. So, what do? We immediately judge ourselves and our abilities or
Yeah.
inabilities. But here's the deal, we do not respond to situations as they objectively are. We respond to them through the lens of our own nervous system and our own histories. So, two people can sit in the same meeting and one feels mildly annoyed and the other one feels genuinely threatened because one of them has a nervous system that's been taught, often through past experiences, that this particular tone of voice or dynamic is dangerous. And neither reaction is wrong, right? They're both real. They're just coming from different inner maps, inner blueprints, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, and a meeting is a good way to take that because how often have you been in a meeting, like a corporate meeting, and so there's like half a dozen people in there. And I was like, "Yep, got it.
Yeah.
Everyone's on the same page. Everyone's shaking hands. Yeah, well, we'll do this, we'll do that. Everyone's got the notes, and then
Yeah.
a week later,
Uh,
it's all messed up. People just forgotten what they said,
yes.
or done something completely different to what was agreed. And then it's like, but that's the point you're making. The people in there are having experiencing the same meeting, but having totally
Yes.
different experiences of it, and having total
Yes.
different experience of it a week later, 2 weeks later.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with a lot of Brene Brown's work, but she does a lot of reform with like corporations. And so she's a social worker and a
You'll have to
speaker,
email
and
me
she's
her
written,
LinkedIn or something or details of like I've
oh,
never not heard of her now.
she's so good. And she works with a lot of like, big, huge corporations. And she goes in and she does a lot of reform work with like where are we missing the communication? Where are we breaking down here as a team? And a lot of it comes back to this like social experiences, right? Social conditioning. This happened to me. So when I come into a meeting and somebody's coming at me like this, my nervous system is on threat. You didn't have that experience. And it's not saying I'm the victim. It's just saying like I don't experience it this way. And both experiences are valid and both are true.
I
So
remember
how do
I
we bridge the
remember
gap?
sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no,
I
no, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
remember being in a meeting when I was a project manager on a building site, and it was in one of the porta cabins on the building site. And there was about 12 people in there, and
Yeah.
the meeting was about 2 hours long. Everyone was getting really tired, and you could just tell about 90% of the people were ready for it to end. There's always that one person
Yes.
that has a question, and then it develops into another question, and then another question. It's like,
No.
and at the time, I was really annoyed about it, but looking back, I can. It's what we've just described. Everyone's kind of had enough of the meeting, but the one person, like, I guess, a
Mm-hmm.
people pleaser, wants to
Mm-hmm.
really, it's not their fault because it's their experience, wants
Yes.
to really get down to the bottom of something. So I just want to go home now.
Yeah.
And they're getting the
Yes. And this
blueprints
person.
out. You like to say one question, so they're getting the blueprints out, looking at more stuff. It's like, oh, just want to go.
But that reassurance was
Yeah,
safety for
yeah,
them. Yeah.
absolutely.
But
It was
everyone else
safety
is
for
like,
them.
oh,
Yeah,
God, do we really have to
yeah.
use the parking lot? Like, is that a real thing? Oh, that's so funny.
So if anyone can take anything away from what we're discussing is, everyone experiences the same things differently and has their own unique relatives, everything.
Yeah. Yes. Everyone experiences things differently, and I think, I was kind of again looking through some of your questions, and it's talking about, like kind of how do we generally like move people through this, to a place of feeling more empowered. So like once I've identified this, what do I do with it? What now? And it's like I think the shift really comes into play when we can start teasing out like what has happened to you from now, what do you get to do with this? And this is not minimizing real harm. Some things that happen to us genuinely are unfair and they're damaging. But I think our healing demands a different question of like, not why did this happen to me, but like what do I want to build now that I understand this about myself, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Like empowerment. It tends to grow out of like a more self-compassionate place, hopefully. And not this like forced positivity or this forced bright siding things. That's really super annoying to me as a clinician.
I have a friend in Spain. He used to work at the company I work for. He used to live in the UK, and then before I quit my old job, he went back to live in Spain. So I've been texting him recently, especially with the football being on where you are, and how
Yeah.
he's obviously a Spain fan. They're in the final, of course.
Yeah.
And obviously football brings us together. We text about the results and stuff throughout the
Yes.
year. But often when I text him, the point I'm getting at when I text him, I want to say to him, I don't know. Well, first of all I ask him how's it going at my old workplace. He says, "Oh, same old, busy, busy, busy," and he'll
Yeah.
give me his description of his experience. And then I just think I just want to say back to him or something like because I left. I mean, I want to say to him, I don't know
Yeah.
how you can still be there, but again, it might have been an experience that didn't work for me, but it might work for him. We experience things
Mm-hmm.
differently. Like
Mm-hmm.
the point
Mm-hmm.
I'm making, and he seems quite happy there, despite being so stressful. But obviously, it wasn't for me. I went. But different
Yeah.
realities again. That's the point I'm trying to make with that.
Yeah. No, but I love that. And I appreciate you kind of adding that on because I think what we're talking about is like when someone is having a different experience, they themselves need to kind of come into their own sense of empowerment, which again, I think empowerment only grows out of self-compassion. It's not about like you can't will your way into feeling empowered to make a change. Like I think you have to build enough internal safety to where you can take ownership that does not feel like a threat for you. And when you're ready to do that and say, hey, this isn't for me, that's great that it's for you. I'm so happy for you. And for me, I want something different. I need something different in my life. And that's not better or worse than you. It's just me realizing that I need something different.
Yeah, it's a tricky one for me as well
Yeah.
because on my episodes on this podcast, I try and describe to people that they only experience what they experience, so they don't necessarily need to move jobs. So the job might be the right job for them. It's just that they're thinking of
Yeah.
the table isn't helping. But the point I should try and make as well, just because I say that doesn't mean you should also stay in a job. If it's that bad, and it's not right for you, and a lot of factors, you should also look for something new. But
Yeah.
the key I think is to understand where experience comes from. So people can either understand that and then stay in a job because it's right for them, or they have the wisdom and capacity within them to move on
Yes.
and have the courage to do so.
Yes. Such a personal decision.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it takes a lot of time sometimes to come to that conclusion.
absolutely. It did for me.
Yeah.
It did for me because I'd say easily 2021. I struggled with that. I wrestled with it in my mind about staying in good. It wasn't until 2024 I decided to take the courage to hand in my
Yeah.
resignation and just do something different and do this, of course. So like you say,
Yeah.
you kind of need to develop the courage to do so. But I think because I was so burdened, I couldn't see that. But when I got to a point
Mhm.
of seeing what I need to see and knowing what I had to do was right, I did it.
Yeah, kind of taking that leap because
Yeah,
again, like we are wired for patterns and we will stay in a discomfort, like an uncomfortable pattern even though it's harming us because it's familiar. And
yeah,
so once we can teach ourselves internal safety and go, you know what, I'm going to make this change and it's going to be scary. And I don't know if there's going to be like a net there whenever I leap, but I've worked enough to build those resources that I'll be okay.
yeah. It's a different experience.
Yeah,
Well, I can relate to that from what I've just said to you. It's a different experience becomes that familiar with us that even though we don't like it, we get comfortable with it. And that's when we stop
sure.
growing and just stagnating it.
Yep.
That's exactly what I was
Yeah.
doing. And I am grateful that I saw the light in my mid 30s and didn't go well into my 50s and 60s until I saw that. So I've got time
Yeah.
to kind of, you know,
Yes.
sort things out basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
So have you found that people sometimes give too much power to circumstances or other people, especially we don't really talk about people's relationship with other people, yeah, have we? Do you think people sometimes
Yeah.
give too much power to circumstances of other people or past experiences when trying to explain how they feel? So we'll talk about other people in this question. So what do
Yeah.
you think is going on when people at work and people got maybe a micromanaging boss or something like that, and they're going, she's making me feel that way, or he's making me feel that way, or
Mm.
that kind of thing. How do you approach someone about that when
Hmm.
the problem might be them and the way they're
Them.
portraying it. Yeah,
Oh man,
it's
that's a tricky
it's a
one.
really bit of truth, and I've done a couple episode about I think I call it something like why your Jacob boss isn't the problem, and I think that's one of my first
Yes.
podcast episodes, and it's a really bitter pill to swallow, but an uncomfortable truth, and it's like you say we can't describe it in
Yes.
words, and it's getting the right words so the point drops for people.
Absolutely. It's a bitter pill to swallow. And I think often, though, I'd frame it gently. It's less about giving away power on purpose and more about not yet realizing that they have any to reclaim. So, when you've spent years explaining your emotional state entirely through what's happening outside of you, it can feel disorienting to consider that your internal state is something that you can actually influence. And that's not blaming people for their circumstances. Real things happen to us, but rather it's recognizing, I think, that our relationship to those things is where our agency actually lives.
Yeah,
So if we can kind of finesse the conversation in that way of like, hey, I care about you. I know that you're not purposely waking up every day wanting to feel this way. And I'm wondering, if you can walk me through what this feels like inside of you, you know, like, so coming from like a curiosity angle so that it's disarming, so people can kind of go, well, yeah, I mean, I do experience it this way, you know, and then we can kind of work on the agency piece.
Yeah, curiosity is a good word there because I'll bet when people sit down with you about that particular topic about other people, I bet they half expect you to agree with them about what they're saying about this
Yes.
person, and go, "Oh, good, this person's been a jerk," and I bet they half expect you to go, "Oh, well, from what you described, yeah, they are a jerk," but then you've kind of you maybe you have done that at the same time, but maybe you've tried to reflect on that with them and go look at a different angle about what's really going on.
Yes, yes, and this is another Brenéism that I'll steal from her, and but she calls it the SFD, and it stands. I don't know if cursing is allowed on your podcast, but
Oh,
I can
absolutely,
give you
yeah,
the
go for
okay,
it. Great swear
okay.
you
So,
might
yeah,
know, so yeah,
okay, awesome. Me too.
especially parents.
Yes, exactly. But she talks about the shitty first draft. And she talks about, like, you know, when you're in an experience and you're experiencing somebody else, you're picking up on body language, but you're also bringing in your past history again, and you're forming this shitty first draft about the way that the story is. Right. And oftentimes it kind of has you being kind of like on the receiving end of something. And how many times do we actually stop and go, hold on, the story I'm telling myself is that X, Y, and Z is happening because based on what I'm observing and experiencing. But have I gotten curious? Do I know this for a fact? Have I peeled back the layers and asked myself the curiosity questions? And so I think that can be really disarming to introduce to a client in therapy of like, hey, we all do it. Like, I just had a shitty first draft this morning at Target, you know, like with an acquaintance, and like all, and then I'm off to the races with a story. So
Yeah,
it's not that, you know, I'm the victim and that this person is doing this to me. It's just that this is what my brain is naturally doing again for safety. It all comes back to safety.
I think the biggest clue, isn't it, is with the other person if the other person isn't even there.
Yes.
If you're not even in the
Yes.
workplace and the other person's not, then you're still procrastinating about it. That's the big clue to think, oh, hang on a minute. If I'm here
Yeah.
and the other person is doing their own business, what's going on
Yeah.
in here? It must be me.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's a good one. It's an important one.
Yeah, other people's a very taboo topic really because it always seems like it's the other person and you can understand why people would feel that way because we've been brought up
Totally.
in a world where from a very young age where if someone does something to you, they're the problem we need to go out and fix in the outside world. About that will make you
Yes.
feel better. That's where we've been brought up and we've
Yes.
learned that. But that's not
Hmm.
what really is really going on.
Right. I don't think we can have a long-term solution to these kinds of issues that you and I are talking about
No.
through that lens, right? Like, yeah, we're not really getting to the meat of it.
No, absolutely. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Um, in your experience, what helps people move from feeling like a victim? I guess we might have said that already, but this is the next question. What helps people move from feeling like a victim of their experience to becoming more empowered? I think you've used that word empowered already in this episode.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate on that this one?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think again, and in my experience, you know, I work with high achieving, high performing women who typically they come in and everything's really polished and put together on the outside. And the story usually starts with how hard they've been working to hold all this together and why things aren't going the way that they had planned. So it's not paying off. And they've not been maybe respected in a lot of ways, and so and that pain is very real, right? Like, it's very valid. I would never dismiss someone's story, but again, I think it's going back to that shift of being able to again tease out what happened to me that was out of my control, and then like what do I get to do with that experience now? You know, so I can give you an example of a client that I was working with for a long time, and she really overperformed. She overperformed in every aspect of her life, specifically with her family. And she really had a lot of grand expectations for how things were supposed to go. And when they would fall short, she would feel this resentment and, you know, just, well, my husband should have known and I set this up for him and he didn't deliver. And so now everyone's blaming me and I'm the bad guy in the family, and on we go. But she also has a really complex trauma history where there was a lot of pain in her family that went named. And there was a lot of fear and there was a lot of scarcity. So there was a lot of talk around like, this isn't enough, like this is fleeting. This is going to go away if we don't like seize every moment and make it so grand. And so we were kind of, talking about how grief is so closely intertwined with scarcity. And oftentimes it robs us from really being able to be in the moment and look at things through a different lens because we're just trying to protect ourselves and protect ourselves from feeling the pain of the uncertainty. And so I think I kind of went in a different direction with that, but it's like getting people to understand that their behaviors have a function. There is a deep purpose behind it. We don't just act a specific way just because it's for fun. It's usually serving some sort of protective purpose. But we've got to get in there and really get under and get into the stories of what was handed to us. And of course, you've adapted this way. That makes a lot of sense. You were just trying to stay safe. That's all.
I'm really delighted you brought a real life client story into this because I'm really
Yeah.
I'm really confused why I didn't write that down as a question actually, but you brought it in naturally, which is great. I normally
Yeah.
ask people that about real life client stories as well,
Yeah.
so thank you for that. And isn't it funny that
Yeah.
the lady in your story kind of had expectations that fell short because
Mm.
like you say, it's understandable she'd feel that way. She's been let down, but who made the expectations up? The lady did,
Yeah.
and obviously if they fell short,
Yes.
it looks like it's the outside world that's kind of disappointed her. But in a way,
Yes.
she disappointed herself because she set a bar, a level of something had to happen for me to feel
Right.
this way, and it didn't materialize. So everyone else is to blame. And
Yes.
I'm not trying to get at it too much because we're all innocent in that. We've all done it. Each and every
Oh,
person who all's done that.
absolutely. Absolutely. But I think that's such the power of being able to own those parts of your story and have compassion for the younger part of you that just didn't know any different. And once we can know that and really synthesize that, we can go, oh, wait a second. I do have agency in this. And in my family of origin growing up, it was never enough. We didn't have enough time. We didn't have enough love. We didn't have enough safety, money, whatever it was. But what do I view as enough? Like, what's my definition now of enough? And I think when we can do that, it's not bright siding things. I hate toxic positivity. I'm not there for any of it. But like, it's saying, like, yes, this can be so painful and so scary, and this can suck really bad right now. And I also can experience moments of gratitude.
Absolutely.
And those two can coexist.
Yeah. I
They just
mean,
can.
go back to the World Cup again. So England fans, obviously, we're obviously out now. We lost to Argentina,
Yes.
Argentina the other evening. But back here, everyone's expectation was we were going to win it, and when
Yeah.
we lost, everyone was so disappointed, and I was one of those people as well.
Mm,
But at the same time, because I know what I know and do what I do, I
yeah.
I kind of understand that we're the ones who have set the expectation in our brains that England can win the World Cup. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, but the problem is that the fact they haven't, we've kind of set our own disappointment up in our brains because, you know,
Mm.
we're the ones who told ourselves England need to win the World Cup, and in reality, they don't. No,
Right.
the world is still spinning on its axis, and the sun's still coming out in the morning. Life is going on.
Yeah.
But for a lot of the
Yeah.
nation here, there's a lot of disappointment
Yes.
about it.
Yes. But that's just it. That's a great example of you being able to
Yeah,
metabolize disappointment without it like taking over your whole reality, which is what
yeah,
a lot of us do. It's
yeah,
like, well, I am this way because of this. And it's like, well, yes, and,
yeah.
you know?
Because let's
Yeah.
face it, there's a lot of people in England who weren't even bothered about it, bothered about football or soccer for that matter. So
Right.
it can't be the football that's doing it to us. We're obviously letting ourselves down with the expectation that something good's coming
Yeah.
up, and it didn't.
Sure.
But never mind.
Sure.
Maybe 4 years time.
We'll see you again in Portugal or in,
Yes,
yeah,
that's it
or
exactly. Yeah,
Morocco or whatever.
Portugal, Morocco, and
And
Spain.
Spain.
Spain, yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it will
yeah.
be. It'll be exciting.
So I want to move on to your yoga
Yeah.
instructing now. So how is yoga? So for people who don't know, you're a certified yoga instructor. How has
Yeah.
yoga influenced the way you think about healing and well-being? Because we've talked about,
Mm,
the mind, like what does something physical do for us? And to give you a little bit of history for me in terms of
yeah.
yoga, I have dipped in and out of yoga a lot, but I kind of find it a little bit too slow. I kind of prefer Pilates because there's a little bit more going on
Sure.
with them. When I
Hmm.
was younger, my mum, who's nearly 70 now, I'd come downstairs or a teenager, she'd be doing yoga on the yoga on the yoga mat, and
Yeah.
that's how I first got introduced to yoga. By my mum doing it, she had all the videos of these like
Yep.
American women. That was
American women
yeah, that
doing
I
yoga
never
in their
heard of,
yoga
but
pants.
but back in the 80s, yeah.
Yes.
These VHS videos, and
Yes.
she was doing that, and she's kind of stopped now. I don't understand why she has
Yeah.
to, because I think it'd be really good for her to carry on doing that. Does maybe she thinks the same way I do with the Pilates. She does more walking now. But sorry,
Mhm.
I'm going on a tangent here. Go back to you. What can yoga do for us about healing and well-being?
Yeah, so yoga, it's interesting. I started my relationship with yoga back in the early 2000s when it was still kind of considered woo-woo, before I kind of caught on. And now everyone seems to be engaging in it or at least trying it, which is great. But it taught me something that my clinical training alone could not. And that is that healing is not only a conversation. Healing to me is something that happens in the body. Um, and so, again, early 2000s, I went there for help with stress and anxiety. We were trying to have children. I had unexplained infertility. Nobody could tell me like what to do to fix it. And I just found myself like in this war with myself, which is again part of the product of being in that perfectionistic mindset of like, I have to do this and I have to perform and I have to get this right. And it was like, such a surrender for me because it was the one thing that I could not perform. It was the one thing like being able to have children. It was not, it was nothing. I was doing everything that everyone told me to do, and I still wasn't having any success. And so it was this like surrender. It has taught me so much about surrender to like where my body actually is and maybe what it needs. And it reinforced for me that the nervous system work that I do with clients isn't abstract and it's physical. So breath, movement, and most importantly, presence in the body are just as much a part of trauma recovery as insight is, in my opinion. And honestly, for a lot of people, that's the piece that finally makes the insight stick, I think, of like, oh, I'm not here just to kind of perform. I'm here to like be with my body and to understand what's going on. And at that point in time, I was having panic attacks and pretty horrific anxiety that I could not get a handle on. And it was like, I just kept coming back to the mat, kept coming to back to the mat. And some days were really beautiful and some days really sucked. And I was like, I hate this. Why am I doing this? But again, it was that resistance. It was like, oh no, it's just me and my mat. It's just me and my mat. What are you fighting right now? Can we ease up on the resistance
I
and
love
just be?
I love that because it's not just exercise. It's a lot of things where people think this sucks. I hate this, but
Yes.
doing something like yoga
Yes.
or going to the gym or doing having that difficult conversation in the workplace can make us feel so much better and, like you say, be more connected with
Yes.
our minds and
Yeah.
our bodies. And would you say that when someone does yoga and they're feeling the trauma of work stress in their body, that yoga can really help kind of settle the body down? I guess with breathing techniques as well, because breathing is very important
Yes.
when it comes to yoga, isn't it? That can help,
Yes.
settle down the symptoms we described early on the recording, like, sweaty palms and shaking bodies and
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
the thoughts, anxiety. If I guess to do yoga well, you have to be quite present, don't you? You can't, like you're saying with being in the gym, you have to be present in the moment because you can't do it, and that you can just let everything
Yes.
go.
Yeah, and one other thing I would add about a yoga practice. So I'm also a runner, although I'm not doing it as intensely as I
I
used
think I've seen
to
you do
because
a
I'm
couple of videos on Instagram when you've been
because
running.
I'm aging. The body does not really appreciate or enjoy a lot of the intensity anymore. That like other than yoga, running was the thing that like would turn my noisy brain off. But that even became something I think a lot of perfectionists and a lot of people who've had early trauma, they choose these high intensity sports because it's like, oh, like I'm just gonna, it's vigorous and I don't have to think, and yoga is vigorous in the same way, but in a lot less, I can like harmful, I guess. And not that running is terrible. So, that's not what I'm saying, but like it's a gentle like curiosity of like, yeah, my brain still can't my brain can't ruminate about this thing. It can't think and overthink while I'm in a yoga practice. But it's also me not compartmentalizing and ignoring it. Like I'm invited to pay attention in
Yeah,
this practice. And it just felt so much more like welcoming and just nice to myself overall. So I just kept sticking with it, as kind of a way to supplement this intensity that I've lived with my whole life.
It's nice to talk to you about yoga because I've not talked to a guest yet where a physical activity has really come into the conversations. That's the
Yeah.
first time I've really spoke
Mm.
to, and yeah, it's just like I say, just took it back to when I was younger. And my mum used to do it in the sitting room, and then like I say with
Yeah,
the
with
TV,
the VHS
the
tapes.
the TV that used to look like a box, and, and like some VHS tapes.
Yes.
One of these flat screen TVs back
Sure. Nope,
then.
nope, we didn't have that.
No. So I want to. I mentioned in the introduction that you had a podcast, Reclaiming Me, and I listened to
Yeah.
your latest episode, did which was great. I really enjoyed it. I was
Yeah.
working away on it on the background.
Oh,
What
good.
inspired you to start that, and who is it for? Who do you target on your podcast? Anyone who having
Yeah.
trouble, or like my podcast specifically targets, corporate professionals? What about you? What
Mhm.
who do you
Yeah.
use it? What's reclaim? Who is Reclaiming Me for?
Who's it for? Yeah. So, really, Reclaiming Me, it came out of wanting to have the conversations in public that I've been having privately with clients every day. Conversations about complex post traumatic stress disorder, perfectionism, people pleasing, and really, what it looks like to actually come home to yourself. So, it's for anybody who's done with the looking good on paper life and is still maybe feeling a little disconnected underneath it all, especially people who have never had language for what they've been carrying. And so I talk pretty openly about my own story on there too, because I think transparency from the person doing the teaching really matters. At least on, my end, I always really appreciate that when I have people who are like, not so much experts, but they're like, yeah, you know what? I've lived this. And so it makes them more credible to me, in my opinion. And I'm not just speaking from outside the work, I'm speaking from inside of the work. So that's really kind of who it's geared towards.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said that
Yeah.
about being honest in your story because I agree. When I've been when I've been my most vulnerable on episodes, they're the
Yeah.
best. They're the best episodes. And like you say, people wrote to me saying how much they resonate, and
Yes.
like you did when you listened to mine. You wrote to me about
Yeah.
being a guest, and when I've been at my most vulnerable, that's the ones where people have kind of related to the most. I think.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
sure.
So, what
For
kind
sure.
of episodes do you have? You do overall solo? Do you have guests on?
Yeah, so I do. I do a kind of a combination of solo episodes, and I put out full-length episodes on Mondays, and then on Wednesdays I do like a little mini midweek reframe, and it's kind of usually a spinoff of the full-length episode where I teach a skill or I maybe just elaborate on a specific concept around that. But then I also do have guests, and hopefully, Luke, you've agreed to come on, so we're going to get to have a really good conversation there.
Yeah, I'd
But
love
like
to. I'm really excited
I
about that already.
yeah, and it's not just for therapists, like I don't just have therapists on. It's like I have people from all walks of life, men and women, and just different stories about, again, the central theme tends to always come back to your outsides not matching your insides. So there's the incongruency and like what do we do with that? Where does it come from? What do we do,
Yeah,
in order to kind of repair a lot of this stuff so that we can live the life that we were meant to live.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. The life we're meant to live because
Yeah.
that's what the needless suffering covers up. It covers up the life
Yes.
we were meant to live. We weren't meant to be
Yes.
born to, and I know it's difficult because we're in a modern world, like we're saying, we've got jobs and got phones and got people to feed,
Sure.
families to bring up, but we weren't born to live that way, the way we are all
No.
living in our head all the time. We were meant to live a tranquil,
Yes.
peaceful life, and it's
Yeah.
understandable why we're all missing it because we're all we all with these phones, we're all dopamine up to our eyeballs, basically.
Oh
It's very
gosh, I
difficult to see.
know. I know. I know. But the good news is about that. I'm starting to hear more conversations though about people wanting more agency, to kind of go, hold on a second. This was created. It was really smart. It's been really great for me in a lot of ways. But like now I'm kind of like I'm tired of like feeling like used in a way,
Yeah,
that like,
yeah,
oh, it's just playing to my, like, oh, I bought that TikTok shop purchase that I really didn't need. It's like, dang it, they did it again. Corporate won again, capitalism at its finest.
that's how I feel about it because it's with these social media platforms. They're all free, and that's great. And thinking, am I the product here? Because
I know. Yes.
that's about like saying I feel like I'm being used
Yes,
for
exactly. But I think a lot
data
of
and
people,
like,
right. We've
yeah,
had it long enough now where we've started to really see the effects of it to where people are like, hold on, like I want to take my power back in this sense, you
yes,
know? Like as good as it feels in the moment, I feel like crap
yeah,
afterwards when I look
absolutely.
at my credit card statement and I've ordered yet another thing I don't need. So,
So let's talk about 2026 to kind of finish.
yeah.
This is the penultimate topic. So, what's exciting you
Yeah.
most about the rest of 2026, both personally and professionally?
Oh gosh. Well, personally, and I feel like I've been talking about this ad nauseum on my podcast, so sorry, reclaiming me listeners for this. There is going to be an end to this, but like personally, yeah, it's like settling into a new space. Everyone said it would happen so fast and your kids would launch. And I used to always roll my eyes when they would be like, enjoy the moment. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, but then they launch. And I have three boys. My oldest is in his third year of college, and I have twin boys who are starting their first year in college. And so we get to be empty nesters. And it has come with so much grief, but I think I'm finally to the point where I'm like, oh, I get to have like a full set of silverware back in my house again. And like, like I'm not feeding an army of children again. And like, I get to like eat a bowl of cereal for dinner if I want. Like, there's so much freedom that's coming and yet also so much sadness at the same time, but
Yeah,
I'm holding both. So transitioning to a different kind of lifestyle where I'm downsizing considerably and I'm getting rid of stuff as fast as I can, and that's exciting to me. And professionally, I'm continuing to grow my practice virtually and in person in California. Deepening the podcast has been like a passion of mine, and expanding into different parts of the United States, which opens a lot of new ground for the work that I want to keep building. It feels like a season of expansion for me after a lot of years of holding things together, which feels fitting, given everything that we've talked about today.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Flying the nest, I'm not too sure I'm ready for that really.
Oh
Only since
gosh,
five
I
minutes since I became
know.
a dad.
Yeah, exactly. I know, and it's scary, right? It's like, oh gosh, like you're 19, 18 years old and you're supposed to figure it out. And, we're a very individualistic society. We launch our kids after graduation out into the world when they're like, I don't even know how to be an adult. So that, yeah, it does come with a lot of fear. And then also, though, I'm trying again not to let that like rule the next phase of this, because I want
Yeah,
my kids to feel empowered and to feel confident, and also to name it. Yeah, of course you're scared. Like I would be like, a little suspicious if you weren't. This is new.
yeah.
This is new for
I
all
love
of
what you
us.
said about the podcast as well. Have actually passion to grow because I feel the same way.
Yeah.
I've been doing podcasting for a year early
Oh
August.
wow.
I'm coming up to my
Yeah.
year anniversary on mine, and you're
Okay.
right. It's like a child that you just can't kind of give up. You want to keep growing, keep nurturing and growing
Yes.
it, and it becomes
Yeah.
addictive to keep doing it.
Sure.
I can't ever see a situation where I'd stop. To be honest, I don't know if you feel the same way. I mean,
No, absolutely not. I started it again, like I said, out of a need to kind of have these conversations publicly. I just felt really called to do it. But how cool that you and I can be sitting, halfway across
yeah,
the world in two different time zones having this conversation and this connection. There's really nothing like it. And I think that's how we all kind of collectively heal and grow, is by talking about these things. So yeah, no, I don't have any plans of slowing down in that area at all.
like you say, it's a big thing. Podcasting is obviously a big thing today, but I think in the next 10 years it's just going
Yeah.
to go like that.
Oh,
Rocket.
sure.
I think you'll be very
Yes.
hard pressed to find someone who doesn't podcast the way it's going because it's getting much more common.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And there's podcasts for everything
Yeah,
too,
absolutely. Yeah,
It's like, yeah, it's such a wealth of knowledge out there. I can look up any topic and go, I want to know about that. I want to learn more about
yeah,
that. So that's really
yeah,
great that we have
yeah,
it. Yeah.
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 Got a long way since the VHS tapes and the VHS
Right.
recorders. Again, going back to the
We're
technology
much
again.
more equipped, aren't we?
So I just want to finish off with this question, which I think is a good one. If listeners could take away just one insight from our conversation today, what would
Yeah.
you want it to be?
Mm. Yeah, this is a good one to end on. And I have to kind of go back to the drawing board of where we started, that I think I would want people to take away that the exhaustion that you feel underneath your success is not a personal failing. And I say this a lot on my podcast, because people come in with a lot of shame about why they're making the choices that they're making. It's just information. The exhaustion is information. Your nervous system has been trying to keep you safe the only way that it knew how. You do not have to keep earning your worth through performance, and you do not have to overhaul your whole life overnight to start feeling different either. Healing again starts in these really small, repeated moments of choosing safety over survival. And that's available to you starting like right now. I think that's my big takeaway.
I think that's a terrific answer to end this podcast on, because I
Yeah.
can relate to that. Like you say, I when I quit my job, I was absolutely exhausted mentally, and
Yeah.
it took me time to kind of finally get over it all. But like you say, it's information. It doesn't define me. It doesn't define anybody else that's listening to us going
Mm-mm.
through a similar thing, and we can still grow and still do good things despite our history. It doesn't. It's not rooted to us. It's not the real us.
Yeah.
We can
No.
progress and get better despite what's
Yes.
happened to us.
Yes, absolutely. From an empowered place, like now that I know, oh, that's information.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much for
Oh,
being a guest. I've really enjoyed our conversation together, and
thank
I'm looking
you.
forward to your return the favor at some point.
Oh, me too. I can't wait to have you on. And thank you again for sticking it out with me. I don't know if your listeners know, we tried to set this up and I had a hard time with time zones and all of that. So thanks for your patience with
No,
that.
no, it's
I
worth the wait.
appreciate
I
it.
really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, it was great. It was
Thank you.
great. Thanks.